Hello and welcome. My name is Erica, and you are at the Lopsided Crafter Loom Knitting channel. Today, I am going to show you how to make a peekaboo cuff, a shadow wrap heel, and a rounded toe on the loom. This is a cuff down pattern. You are going to need a few things to make this successful for you. Obviously, your loom. I am going to be using a 60 peg flexi loom. You're going to need some type of stitch markers. I like to use the flexible ones as well as these light bulb stitch markers. You are also going to need a darning needle, some scissors to cut your ends, a loom hook, obviously your yarn, and if you're using stitch markers, this is not necessary, but very helpful. This is a magnetic slap bracelet that you put right here on your wrist. It comes in handy when you are using the light bulb stitch markers. You are also going to need some sort of knitting needle, whether it is a circular needle like this or a DPN. I will be using this one, and it is a US 1 2.25 millimeter. We're going to use this at the end when we take the sock off the loom to do the Kitchener closing. A tape measure of some sort may come in handy, but I like to use this sock ruler from Twice Sheared Sheep. So basically what you do is you put this part into either the heel or the toe, depending on if you are working cuff up or cuff down, and you knit until you get to the shoe size that you want. And if you flip it over, you can actually see that it is just about 1.5 inches shorter than the overall length of my foot. Using this has actually come in quite handy, even with negative ease. I don't know how they do it. I'm not going to question it. All I know is it works. So this does come in handy. I typically measure on the first sock, and then the second sock I write everything down, and then on the second sock I just go to town. Typically it is the same amount of rows or rounds for my foot. This one is 73. Again, it all depends on what yarn you're using too. I will make note that the heel that we are doing and the toe that we are doing can be done on any sock. The toe itself is 1.5 inches. So what that means is that you would knit your sock until you are 1.5 inches shorter than your desired length. And then that extra 1.5 inches should reach your desired length. The shadow wrap heel is really easy, and after trying this sock on, I think that this is probably going to be my new heel. I know that this is the one that I like to knit the most on the needles, so I figured that I would try to incorporate it into the loom, and I'm glad that I was able to do that and figure it out, because this is a very nice fitting heel, at least for me. So yeah, let's go ahead and get started. You are going to need, like I said, you're going to need your main color and a contrasting color. You don't have to do your heel in a different color, but if you want this little peekaboo cuff here, you will need a little bit of yarn of a different color. So let's get started. Okay, so let's mark our loom. I am using a 60 peg loom, and this is the Flexi Loom by KB Looms. I have a stitch marker for my beginning of round, and then I have one right next to it. I have one over here at my 30 mark, because that is half the loom, and then one next to that, which coincides with this one over here. If you are using a different loom other than a 60 peg loom, divide your loom in half and then divide that by 3, and that will give you what you need here for your toe and heel. Actually, it's more for your heel on this sock because we're doing a different toe. But I have 10 stitches from here to here, 10 in the middle, and 10 from here to here. These 2 stitch markers on this side and the 2 on this side will be used when we do our toe. That will be our main area that is knitted, and then we will be decreasing on each side of these stitches to make the toe round, kind of like this. You see how we have this nice little rim here? That's what these stitches here and over here will do. Okay, alrighty, let's get started. Okay, we're going to start with a slip knot. We're going to put it on this first peg right here. Cinch it down a little bit, put your tail towards the back. Probably going to end up changing this main stitch marker because it's not the best stitch marker for this loom. Now what we want to do, because we're doing a double E-wrap cast on, is we want to kind of hold this tail behind, so that way it doesn't, this whole thing, because it's not really anchored down, it will move. So if you kind of hold that tail in the back, it stops that loop from turning. And then you're going to tighten it down a little bit more. And knit it off. Now, we're going to go to the next peg. Still kind of loose, but once we get a few more stitches on there, it'll tighten down. So you're going to E-wrap that peg twice. 1 and 2. And then knit that off. And then 1 and 2. And knit that off. Okay, so now let's put our stitch markers on. So let me zoom in here a little bit so you can see. Now this is the way that I do it. Other people may do it differently, and that is fine. If you find that you like somebody else's way better, go for it. So what I do is I just put a stitch marker here in this. I'm putting it in this loop right here, like so, making sure that you get every stitch, because you don't want to split your yarn. So just make sure that you're getting every part of that. Okay, so there's one. And then if you look at the back, you have this little knot right here where your slip knot was. And if you take your loom hook and you put it through that little knot right there, let me move this guy out of the way. Hold my yarn. So what we are grabbing onto is this bit of yarn right here, and that's the yarn that has wrapped around. You see how it's wrapped around the stitch. We're going to put another stitch marker right in there. And then once you get a hold of it, you can pull and it'll open up a little bit. The reason I do that is because even though you are double casting on every peg, you are always seem to be one peg short. I don't know the science behind it, don't know why, but I know that if I do not do that extra stitch marker right there, then I will not have enough stitches. So now I am just going to find that other one and bring it back around to the back so that it is out of the way. And then we are just going to continue to do our double E-wrap cast on. And then I will put my last stitch marker over here on this last peg when I finish my first round. So that way, like I said, it is a lot easier when you're folding up. You know which, you have 3 stitches right here that you can base your work on, so that way it doesn't get all wonky. All right, we're going to double E-wrap, cast on the rest of these pegs all the way around the loom. You can use a different cast on if you like. I have found that this one works really well when you are doing a folded cuff. It's not bulky like some of the other cast-ons, but if you want to use a different one and you like it, let me know and we will try that one out too. So, yeah, you're just double E-wrapping. So E-wrap once and twice and knit it off. And we're going to do that all the way around the loom. Okay, once you have double E-wrapped all the way around every peg, you're going to come here to the back and you are going to put your stitch marker in this last stitch here. Like I said, that's just going to be easier for you to find them later. Just let them hang out here in the back. They'll be all right. They're not going to be in your way or anything. And then from here, we are going to knit. I did forget to mention at the beginning of the video that it is handy to have some kind of row counter, whether you are using one like this or you write it down. That way you can keep track of your rounds. We are going to do 16 rounds of this contrasting color. We're just going to knit round and round and round 16 times. And this is the same for all size looms, whether it's 56, 60, 64, 72. The only time we'll have anything different is when we get into the actual shaping of the heel and of the toe itself. But let's knit our 16 rounds of our contrasting color, and then we are going to change colors to the main color. Once you have your 16 rounds of your main color done, we are going to reset our row counter, cut our contrasting color, and join our main color in. You want to join here on your first peg of the round. simply take the yarn and put the tail in the opposite direction of the way that you work and wrap the yarn around the front. Then hold on to the working yarn and the tail just a little bit to give it a little bit of slack there. So that way you can do your stitch without that yarn falling off. Now, you're just going to grab that working yarn and start knitting around. Here in the beginning, you don't want to pull it too tight because you don't want to pull the yarn out because it's not secured yet. Okay, now we are going to knit 12 rounds of our main color, and then we are going to join the bottom here to make our folded cuff. 12 rounds of the main color have been knitted, and now it is time to attach our cuff back up onto the pegs. We are going to reset our row counter to 0 and set this aside while we join the cuff. So, right here where I join the new yarn, I pull it a little taut so that way it closes the hole here of where you joined the yarn. And then I just tie it in a little bit of a knot here. I don't normally like to knot, but this yarn is going to be on the inside of the cuff and you're not going to see it or feel it anyway. So now what we're going to do is we're going to find the last stitch marker. So that would be the green one in my case. We're going to bring it forward and we're going to put it on the peg next to our marked peg for beginning of round. Let me zoom in here a little bit. Now these first couple stitches, sometimes you may have to use your loom hook to kind of help get it on the peg. Sometimes you can finagle it enough with the stitch marker to do it. Just whatever way is easiest for you, because that is a small stitch, and once you get these first couple ones on, the other ones are a lot easier because the yarn kind of opens up. Here we go. Now I do leave these stitch markers on until I get every loop on, and that is because if for some reason a stitch went onto the wrong peg or something like that, then I know exactly where I'm starting from. And I won't just, it's just a little bit of an easier backup for you. So then the middle stitch marker, which would be our first blue stitch marker, goes on our beginning of round marker. And then the next one goes on our next peg. And I'm going to take this working yarn tail from our cast on and I'm going to kind of feed it around inside this cup as well. And that way I won't have to worry about weaving that tail in later. Get that stitch, being careful not to twist them. Like I said in the beginning, these first couple stitches are kind of cumbersome here, but it is worth it because it makes a pretty cuff. Once you have those on, if you turn it around, turn your loom around, and we're going to put our working yarn, or tails here rather, and we're just gonna kind of feed those around. You want to make sure that your actual working yarn is out here. You don't want to accidentally close it up in this cuff. So now if you roll the cuff up, you will see you have these little edges right here. Let me grab one so you can actually see. You see these little edges right here? These are the ones that you are going to put right on the pegs. And from here, it is a lot easier to do. You just pick up those edges and pop it on. So I usually do a few this way. You just want that one strand. And then I'll come over here and do a few this way. Again, you just want that one strand. Continue doing this all the way around the loom, picking up those one strands, and then I will show you what to do next. Okay, now that we have picked all of our stitches up, we have done this part of our cuff. Now we are going to work on the leg. I am doing a shorty sock, so I am going to knit 20 rounds. You can do the amount of rounds that you prefer. You can do less than 20 or more. And then when we get back, we will learn how to do the shadow wrap heel. Okay, before you start your leg, let's take a minute to look around the loom to make sure that we have 2 loops on every peg. Once we've determined that we have 2 loops on every peg and everything seems to look straight, we can go ahead and remove those stitch markers. So this is where this little thing comes in handy, especially if you don't have your stitch marker box next to you. You can just remove that stitch marker from that stitch. I always like to close them up. That way I don't stab myself later. But see how easy that is? Unless you throw one on the floor like I just did. But then you just pop that right there. And then they're there if you need them for a next step or whatever. So from here, what we are going to do is just knit. As I said, I am going to be doing 20 rounds, but you are going to treat both of these loops as one. So just knit them off together as you come to them. Just like so. And then once you've went all the way around, your cuff will be attached. So go ahead, finish your leg, and then we will do our heel. Once you have knitted your leg, in my case, 20 rounds, you'll have something that kind of looks like this. I'm going to set this off to the side as we do not need this right now, and I'm going to reset it to 0. If you are using a different color yarn for your heel, you will want to get that ready now to attach, and you will leave your main color just hanging out. We don't want to cut that. I'm going to grab my contrast color here that I'm using for my heel. Now, before we get started, we are going to be doing our heel very, very similar to the way that we do a short row heel. meaning we're going to be working from this peg to our march peg on both sides and leaving the pegs here in the middle open. The only difference is we're not doing any wrap and turns or any German short row turns. We're doing twin stitches and triple stitches. That is the only difference. So let's go ahead and get our yarn started, and we are going to attach it here to peg number 1, our beginning of round marker. Remember, the marker here and the one over here on this side are not part of the heel. We're working with the half loom marker and our beginning of round marker, and then our 2 here in the middle. We are going to attach our yarn just like we did when we changed to the main color. We're going to wrap it around and hold it here in the back, and we are going to knit that bottom stitch off. And now we are just going to simply knit to the other side. Remember, don't pull too tight right here in the beginning because you don't want to pull your yarn out. So we're going to go ahead and knit across till we get to 1 stitch before our last marked stitch. And then we're going to put a twin stitch in that one. It's actually really easy. Maybe the trickiest part is finding the stitch, but once you get a hang of it, really, really easy. I actually feel like this heel is a little bit easier than the wrap and turn type heels. Okay, so we're getting close here. All right. Remember, we're ignoring this marker. It is just a regular stitch when it comes to the heel. So now we're going to fold this loom over. And it may be a little bit hard to see, but you see this little purl bump right here? This was the last stitch that we made. We're going to pick that stitch up. Make sure you get the whole stitch. Don't split it. And you are going to bring it forward. Do not drop it. Keep your loom hook in that stitch. You're going to take your working yarn and you are going to wrap from front to back around that peg and pull that stitch back over. Now you have a twin stitch. When you go to your next stitch, just pull it just a little tight. That way you can take some of that slack out, and then you simply knit back across to the other side. All right, remember this stitch marker we're ignoring for the heel. So now we're back here to our beginning of round, and I am going to just pull these 2 working yarns kind of out of the way here, and we're going to bring this forward. And our last stitch there is the yellow one that we put our heel yarn through. So we're going to pick that up like so, bring it forward, do not drop it, keep that heel tail back here so it's still wrapped around. Take your working yarn, go from front to back, and now I'm going to kind of grab that tail at the same time, and we're going to flip that over. Okay. Now you should be good as far as the tail of your heel color until we do the triple stitch, which is at the end. So now we're going to knit back to the other side, and we are going to put a twin stitch at the peg before the previous twin stitch. And now we will be putting a twin stitch on this peg because this one already has one. So again, you bring it forward, you look for that last stitch, which is going to be a pink one. Pick that up, bring it forward, hold on to it. Take your working yarn, go from back to front, and flip that stitch over. Now you have 2 stitches on that peg. You're going to do that back and forth until you have a twin stitch on every peg from your beginning of round marker to this marker and your halfway point marker to this marker. You will have just single stitches here in the middle, just like on your wrap and turn type heel. Do that, and when we get back, I will show you how to do the triple stitches as we increase back out. Once you have done a twin stitch on every peg in between your marked pegs, you should have something that looks like this. You have 2 stitches on each of these, 1 on the ones in the middle, and 10 on each of these. And your heel is looking something like this. Now we are going to work those stitches back off. So the first thing we need to do is knit over here to our other side. So we're going to knit to our first twin stitch on this side. So here is our first twin stitch. We are going to knit that twin stitch off, treating both of those loops as one stitch. And now in the next peg, we are going to make a triple stitch. So we're going to do that the same way that we did our twin stitches. We're going to bring it forward and look for that same exact loop, and it is right here. Pick that stitch up. We're going to bring that stitch forward just like we did with the other ones. Don't drop it. From back to front, wrap, and now you have a triple stitch. And now we are going to knit back to the other side to our first twin stitch on that side. Okay, here's our twin stitch. We're going to knit that, treating both of those stitches as one. And then make a triple stitch in our next stitch. Bringing that forward and finding that stitch. Making sure that you get all of the strands. That one is wanting to split. Here we go. Bring it forward. Don't drop it. Wrap your yarn from back to front and flip it back over. Now, what we're going to do is knit to the other side. But the first stitch we come to is going to be a triple stitch. So here is our first triple stitch. We are going to knit these off, treating all 3 loops as one. You may have to do these individually because this is a little tight here. Just make sure that you get all of those stitches off. Now we are going to do a triple stitch on the next peg. Bring that forward, find that stitch. Here we go. Bring it forward, wrap from back to front, and now you have a triple stitch on this peg. And now we are going to knit back to the other side and do the same exact thing. Here's our first triple stitch. Knit those off, treating that as one stitch. And now we are going to triple stitch here on our next stitch. Bring it forward, hold on to it, yarn from back to front, and flip back over. And we're going to do this back and forth until we have one triple stitch left on this marked peg and this marked peg. So we'll have one left on each side. When you get to that point, I will show you what to do next. Okay, I have worked all of my stitches off except for the last one. I have a triple stitch over here, and I'm getting ready to put a triple stitch in this last peg right here. I wanted to show you this one again because it is the tail where we joined our yarn. So again, you pick up that, in this case, it's that yellow strand, and bring it forward. And then wrap your yarn and flip that back off. And now we have a triple stitch here. Now, if you changed colors for your heel, this is when you would drop your contrasting color and pick your main color back up. So I am going to snip my contrasting color here and get it out of the way. And I'm going to pick up my main color. Now, there is going to be a little bit of a difference on what we're going to do next based on if you changed colors for the heel. If you did not change colors for the heel, you will start on the peg next to the triple stitch. If you did change colors for the heel, we are going to start at our beginning of round marker. We're going to pick up our main color yarn and just bring it forward and knit that stitch off like we normally would. This one is going to be looser. Again, you will have to pull your tails back here to kind of tighten them down just a little bit. Okay, take that slack out. And now we just simply knit around. This is considered the first round of your foot. So you would knit all the way back around over here, pick that stitch up as one, and then continue knitting your foot. Okay guys, this concludes part 1 of this tutorial. From here, you will just knit your foot and then your toe. Stay tuned for part 2 coming in a few days, where we will actually do our rounded toe decreases and the Kitchener cast off. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, stay cozy, happy looming, and may all your socks find their matches.